Hello, welcome, and good morning. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Shree's Sunday New York Times Read Along. We have a special guest with us today, Veronica Chambers, editor, narrative projects at the New York Times, and co-author of Finish the Fight about the women's suffrage movement. She's also the lead editor of a special section, Suffrage at 100, which we'll be focusing on today. Our host, of course, is Shri Srinivasan. My name is Neil Parekh. I'm the executive producer and guest host of Shri's Sunday New York Times Read Along. We're live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Please share, please retweet and comment. Let us know where you're watching from. And without further ado, we're going to go live to the Upper West Side of Manhattan to check out our Upper West Side camera. We have a great view of New York City, and we have Shri telling us what we're seeing. Shri, what do we see up here?
Good morning, everyone. We are on a cool and rainy morning in New York City. And you're looking at from the Upper West Side into Midtown Manhattan there in the distance, and all the way in the distance, all those skyscrapers are actually scraping the skies today, as you can see. And over here is New Jersey and the Hudson River. People are joining us and saying hello. Jonathan from the East Village, which figures in suffragist history. Great to have you, Jonathan. Let's see who else is watching. Sujana Chandrasekhar. Jonathan Borstein beat me again. He's always here. And Sujana is the co-host of She's on Call, a show we'll tell you more about. 11 a.m. Eastern, don't miss it. Doug Levy's watching from Greater San Francisco at 5:30 in the morning. Doug, go back to bed. Let's see, Diane's watching from New Jersey. Tell us where you're watching from. Tell us how your Sunday is going. Tell us who should also be watching. Someone you know somewhere would benefit from watching this. We're live every Sunday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, and we go for about 2 hours. And just always happy to have this amazing community that has come together around this show. So grateful. Julia Weeks, one of our producers, is watching. And good morning from the DMV. We should tell people what the DMV is.
Exactly. I wanted to make sure people didn't think she was stuck in line on a Sunday morning at the Department of Motor Vehicles, although people do need to get their enhanced driver's license if you haven't gotten that yet. The DMV is, there are two ways you can refer to it. Either it's DC, Maryland, Virginia, and I live in Springfield, Virginia, but there's also the Delmarva Peninsula, and some people think of Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, that a slice right on the East Coast. But thank you for joining us, Julia. Usually Julia is in Brooklyn. She's one of our producers. But she's down, I believe, visiting family in Maryland. In addition to Julia, Patricia Freudenberg is joining us on LinkedIn. Thank you always for joining us, Patricia. We have Michael Kovnat joining us from Santa Fe, New Mexico. So again, the early risers out there.
Michael's my former grad school classmate from 27 years ago. Hi, Michael.
Wow. And of course, we have Stephen Kaplan, the son of one of the first 6 women to patrol with men on the NYPD in 1973. And Stephen is, of course, a good friend of ours and a good friend of the show. Celeste is joining us from Chicago. Rob Lusky, I'm going to take a guess on the name. Hopefully I wasn't too far. Ron Thomas from Dubai. Thank you, Ron, for joining us. Shout out to my mom from joining from Hastings on Hudson. Hi, Mom. How are you doing? And so many more people. Tim Sohn and Paula Kiger as well from Florida, another one of our producers, and Steve Taylor as well. And saying thank you to Patricia. And we also have someone watching from Mumbai. And Celeste tells me I got it right, Shri. So, hey, that's not a bad way
Nicely done.
To start.
We should tell people who missed the news last week that Neil is joining DigiMentors, my social, digital, and virtual events consulting company. His first day is tomorrow, but you can see he's already hard at work. We have been doing this together for about 2.5, 3 years now, all volunteer work that he was doing. And from that relationship has come this opportunity for him to join us full time. We're so excited to have him. We know that we will be able to grow the business and help so many of our clients around the world. And Neil joins us from United Way, United Way Worldwide, the world's largest privately funded nonprofit, and just so happy that he could join us. Thank you, Neil, for all your work and for inspiring us to take this New York Times read along to a whole new level.
Thanks, Shri. I really appreciate it. I'll be, as folks know, and to say my first day is going to be tomorrow is a bit of a misnomer. Last week was vacation, but I certainly worked quite a bit. But I'll be joining as the VP of Events and Communications for Digimentors, not just our New York Times read along, our She's on Call show, our Shri COVID-19, but also all of the great clients that we get to work with, and also overseeing our communications work around our social media, our website, and other marketing efforts. But I wouldn't be doing this if we didn't have such a great team to work with. And here on the New York Times read along, we have one of the best teams. We have Paula Kiger, who is at Big Green Pen, Steve Taylor at Steve DeReeve, Julia Weeks at Julia L. Weeks, and Carla Baranauckas at Kabara. They're the ones that help bring the New York Times read along to you every week. One of the things, the features of our show is that we have people watching in the various platforms that we're streaming to. So if you're watching on Facebook, for example, and if someone shared the video, make sure you click on the actual video on Shri's page, because if you leave a comment, then we'll actually see it. And Paula will be interacting with you, sharing links and providing context. Steve is doing the same on LinkedIn. Julia is doing great work on our analytics, and Carla has been incredible in terms of helping us get guests for the show. And in fact, we've had several people wonder, how do we get such great guests? Carla was a longtime Times woman. She was head of the continuous news desk for years, and also a national copy chief for the New York Times. So we've had some great guests, but not just New York Times guests. She brought us Harlan Coben as well. So we've certainly owe a debt of gratitude to our team. Please follow them on their respective channels. They definitely make the New York Times read along possible, and is part of the reason I joined Digimentors, because I knew I'd be working with great people. Shri, we also have some sponsors to thank before we jump into the paper. We certainly want to acknowledge the great support that we've gotten. Can you thank Muckrack for us?
Absolutely. Muckrack Academy, Fundamentals of Social Media, is a free certification course now available, mrac.co/social. You will learn Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. I learned so much putting this together with our friends Stefan Kaplan and Linda Bernstein and Mike Schneider from Muckrack. Everyone, please tell a friend to take this course. It's free. 4,000 people have taken it, and you will learn something, I promise.
Absolutely. And we also want to thank, in addition to Muckrack, we also want to thank Strategy Focus Group. Between Muckrack and Strategy Focus Group, we have some really great sponsors. Strategy Focus Group is a global team of human capital strategists committed to helping organizations solve people issues within your organization. They do that by working alongside you to solve your toughest problems and helping you capture your greatest opportunities. We certainly want to thank both Greg Gallant and Mike Schneider from Muckrack, and our friend Ron Thomas from Strategy Focus Group. You can see on the bottom of your screen links to their websites, readalong.link/muckrack and readalong.link/strategy focus group. Please follow those links to learn more. And if you're interested in being a sponsor, please contact Shri or myself. Shri's email is shri@shri.net, and my email is neil@neilparekh.org. We would be happy to talk with you about various sponsorship opportunities and tell you more about the show. With that, Shri, we have an incredible paper to discuss today. Will you give us a tour of the various sections? And while you're doing that, I'll put on the screen some of the people who are still joining us and saying hello.
I also want to point out that Suresh has noted muckrack from India, and Patricia says you can get a printable certificate with the course. So that's one of the fun things about it. I'll give a tour here and remind everyone to please tag your friends. Please hit share. They can watch now or whenever they wake up, or whatever's convenient for them. So we know Sunday mornings can be complicated for folks, but thank you so much for being here and for watching some of this. We have a terrific guest coming up in a couple of minutes. Veronica Chambers is joining us. She's a narratives editor of the New York Times and someone who worked on this very important section here, how American women won the right to vote. And we'll talk all about that. But first, let's just take a quick tour of the paper. The New Velvet Rope Rapid Tests is the headline here. And I think this is something that we all should pay attention to, that some people are able to get tests within hours, test results in hours, and others can take as long as a week or more. When we're making the most of what we got is the cover of the at-home section, Sunday Business, the 3 abductions of N. This is about how estranged parents flee with children. Recovery agents get them back for a fee. And this is about a girl who was abducted 3 times. The book review cover is Edward P. Jones and reviewed by A.O. Scott. The Americans, Writers Who Show Us Who We Are is the second in a series. Arts and Leisure, Second City and Improv Powerhouse has defined generations of comedy. It's also had an enduring culture of racism. Can it finally change its ways? Wow, I did not know about that. Second City is a very famous improv company. Sunday Review, The Black Lives Next Door. A new generation of activists trying to figure out where to concentrate its efforts. Residential desegregation is the final frontier. And you've seen that President Trump has made that a part of his work in trying to get reelected. And that Sunday Times Magazine has a fiction section, The Lying Life of Adults, in an excerpt from the new novel of Elena Ferrante. So I don't know if you've had a chance to see this yet, but a fiction section, about 12 pages in broadsheet. The real estate section cover is Redesigning for a New Normal. Working and schooling in place have prompted some to make extensive alterations. So folks will be interested in that. And we'll come back to this very important section because the editor of the section is here. So excited to have Veronica join us in just a minute. I'm going to bring her in to read the front of page of the New York Times, but I want to point out that the main picture is about the Postal Service. Growing crisis in Postal Service alarms voters. Ballot volume dwarfed by Christmas mail. And the police postal carrier Henrietta Dixon in Philadelphia. Mounting delays affect not only ballots, but also medicines and other deliveries. Such an important point. And we're seeing how the president politicizing everything about American life impacts Americans of all kinds all over the country. So let's now just show, thank you for showing my newsletter. So every Sunday I have a newsletter that comes out at around 8 a.m. Eastern time. And today the lead story, I hadn't seen the print section of the Times, saved the U.S. Postal Service. And our friend Zach Peterson in Prague, who's a director of content at Digimentors, the company that Neil has just joined, helps put this together. And thank you for those of you who have this in your inbox. Please open it. If you're not a subscriber, you see the address rolling by you, srinet.substack.com, srinet.substack.com. We give you things to read, things to think about, things to listen to. And we, of course, give you a list of all the things that we're up to, including the New York Times read along. Lots of great comments coming in from folks, and Paula has just tweeted out or sent out the email, the website address for the newsletter, srinet.substack.com, and there's a nice little welcome to Neil in there as well. I don't think he's seen it yet because he's too busy preparing this.
I haven't seen it yet. Before we move on, Sri, I just wanted to take a moment with all the discussion around the Postal Service. I want to give a big shout out to all the postal workers out there, members of the National Association of Letter Carriers. Myself, before I joined United Way, I worked with SEIU, another union, I know that we work very closely with the letter carriers on the annual food drive. People don't realize how hard a job it actually is, and they've been doing great work. And you can see from some of the tweets the role that they've played, not just now, but in history, how people have targeted letter carriers and the postal system. So I just want to give a big shout out to all the men and women of the National Association of Letter Carriers.
I think that's so important, and we should, for our daily COVID show, for folks who are not familiar, we run a show every single day around COVID-19 issues. We should definitely talk to a representative from there. But I want to show you this tweet that's in my newsletter. Manisha Sinha, who's a professor of Civil War history, she says the last people to intervene with the U.S. Postal Service were slaveholders who invaded post offices and burned abolitionist literature. So just understand the history of where this hatred of the Postal Service comes from. This is not new. I want everyone to understand that. So that's what slaveholders were going into the post office and burning abolitionist literature. Just how horrible that legacy is, and why we would continue to be in the same situation here all these years later, more than a century later, is horrifying.
And if you can see the
Steve
comment,
Taylor, my maternal grandmother worked for the post office. He was the postmaster of the booming metropolis of Dingman's Ferry, Pennsylvania. And Steve, that is awesome. I did not know that. We learn about our own colleagues through this show and through the newspaper. And just great to have everybody here. Thank you so much. Chris Gorman's watching from Manhattan. Hi, Chris. And thanks for all you do over at the American Folk Art Museum. They do great work there. All right, Neil.
Great.
So let's,
thank you, Shri.
Thank you for setting this up so well. And we're ready to bring on our guest, Veronica Chambers. Veronica, greetings and welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, good morning. I'm so happy to be here.
Delighted to have you here. Thank you for being here. My first question always to our guests, how are you? Where are you?
I'm good, and I'm in Hoboken, New Jersey.
Okay, so we could almost see it from my window when I showed you. One of our favorite lines here is to say, whenever we talk about New Jersey, everything is legal in New Jersey.
It's one of the best and surest lines.
The line from Hamilton. Tell us a little bit about your work. First of all, you have an awesome title at the New York Times. Tell us about that work, please.
Sure. So I'm editor of narrative projects. I work for the special projects team, which is run by Monica Drake, one of the mascot editors. And we really focus on big, ambitious storytelling projects, and suffrage is one of them. We try to tell stories across a number of platforms. So we do special print sections, digital interactives, events, books. We just try to really use all or many multi-leveled elements of what the Times can offer to tell the story.
That's awesome. And Monica Drake was the first New York Times person to be a guest on this show, and she's been a guest more than once. She used to be the travel editor and a former student of mine. So please say hi to Monica. So proud of all she has achieved.
Oh, that's great. She's amazing to work with. She really is such a fine, line by line editor, but also a big picture thinker. And she really supports us in just doing innovative, ambitious plans, like everything we've done for suffrage.
So let's talk a little bit about this issue. It's come out in the paper today, and we're so lucky to have you today. So that tells you something about how the Times is making sure that everybody knows about the 100th anniversary. So we have people, as you know, watching from all over the world that may not know the history of the suffragist movement in the US. So set that up for us and then set up this issue, and I'll flip through it.
Sure. So, it's true. A lot of people don't know the history of the suffrage movement in the US, but it's also true that we're not taught it very much. And so about a year ago, maybe a little more, when we decided we knew the anniversary was coming up, Tuesday, August 18th, will be the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote. We actually sent out a huge email survey to 30 historians, writers, curators who cover suffrage, and we asked, what don't we know? And one of the most important things we learned was that a lot of people date it to Seneca Falls, which was the first major women's rights convention in 1849. I hope I don't get my dates wrong, but actually, you know, women's voice in terms of political power and asking for the vote goes back to 1830. And then a lot of people think about 1920 as not the end, and that they believe that the truer end to suffrage is the Voting Rights Act, which was 1965. So we think about suffrage, but we also realize that it was a much bigger lens than we had originally thought of.
And what is your sense of the reason we don't know enough about this history in America? Why are we not taught this? Why, you know, I was saying international folks may not know, but a lot of Americans don't know this either.
I think it's partly because we're not taught a lot about women's history. I mean, I think a lot of the people that we work with, as well as people that we talk to, they knew about Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, but the story of suffrage is so much broader, and that's what we really wanted to dive into in our work, or who were the voices that intersect with suffrage. And the other thing I think that we really learned is that suffrage history is kind of shorthand for women's history. Everything that happened to American women from the early 1800s through 1920 dovetails and interacts with suffrage in some way.
And here we are, we're looking at how women won the right to vote. There's a special section, about 44 pages, and this is part of your work, including a book that's coming out. Tell us about that too, please.
Sure. So the first thing that we did was we actually wrote a middle grade book called Finish the Fight. I have it here.
Fresh off the presses. Let's take a look. Yes. Hold that up. Yeah, I can see Finish the Fight and the brave and revolutionary. Go ahead. You read that, please.
Sure. Actually, maybe it's clear here. Finish the Fight, the brave and revolutionary women who fought for the vote. And I wrote this with 5 New York Times women, and it was just a lot of fun. Jennifer Schuessler, Amy Putnani, Jen Harlan, Sandra Garcia, and Vivian Wang. And it was, you know journalism very well. Often when you're diving into a subject you don't know well, you tell someone, explain it to me like I was a 10-year-old. And so in some ways, like really trying to teach ourselves about suffrage, it was great to start with trying to explain it to a middle school student. And in that way, we just dove so much into the reading and the writing about American women and voting rights. And that gave us a great starting point. So by the time we started our coverage, we had been deep into it.
And Paula's put in the link to how to pre-order Finish the Fight. And Pradnya says the history of marginalized communities is not taught in American schools. And so you've brought in a book that can help right there in American schools. Let's take a look at who the co-authors are again. We had that nice screenshot of the 5 folks who work with you, all amazing women. And just great. Here you go. Veronica Chambers, Jennifer Schuessler, Amisha Padnani, Jennifer Harlan, Sandra Garcia, and Vivian Wang. And Amy Padnani, who's the obituary editor, was on my daily show a few weeks ago, and talking about the ADA and the Americans with Disabilities Act special section. And she will be on the New York Times read along in the weeks ahead. I'm a obituary geek, so I'm looking forward to geeking out with her about that. Tell us how these special sections come together. This is a 44-page section in the paper today. How do you take the work that you did for a 5th grade book and turn it into, in part, into a New York Times article or special section?
Sure. So the book was really just the launching pad. It was us getting sort of deep into it and wanting to create something. It was great because we also worked with 11 young women illustrators who were all women of color and or queer. And so that was a great opportunity to kind of work with a diverse team. And then when we started to plan the coverage, we did 2 things. One, we planned a series of events called Unfinished Work. Valerie Jarrett was a guest on the first one, as was Martha Jones, who has an amazing book out about Black Americans and voting rights called Vanguard. I think Martha was actually on the call, and we're all big fans of her work. So we did events. We kind of started in May, and we started doing digital events. And then around the same time, April, May, we started to a lineup of stories that we wanted to do. And we really wanted to expand the idea of what suffrage is. The whole idea of like troubling the traditional image of the suffragist as someone who is white or upper class or East Coast. So we wanted to get into the West, where some of the really big battles of suffrage were won early. We wanted to get into Native American women. That's been a big thing in history, is sort of centralizing the narrative of Native American women. Several historians, including Sally Wagner, who was part of our suffrage roundtable, have written about how Seneca Falls actually took place in the upstate territory of the Haudenosaunee, also known as the Iroquois. And those women had political power, they had say, they had a vote, and that was very inspiring to early suffragists. So we really wanted to get into Native American women and their rights, because at the same time, while Native American women had power and political voice in their nations, when 1920 came, Native Americans couldn't vote because they weren't citizens. So Native American women weren't technically able to vote till 1924. And we wanted to get into Asian Americans, we get in specifically into Chinese American women, we get into queer women. We just wanted to just tell as broad a story as possible.
Look at Martha Jones. Good morning from Greenport, New York. Excited to hear from Veronica Chambers. Thank you so much, Martha, for being here. Would love to hear about your book. Please do email me, sri@sri.net. Would love to get you on one of our shows. We have a daily program as well, talking about all kinds of issues, including politics, and would love to talk about your work. Thank you.
Yeah. And Martha has an essay in this collection as well. We were so lucky. We just, I kind of honestly didn't feel like this issue would be complete if we didn't have Martha's voice in here. And she has a beautiful essay about Black women and what 1920 was just really the beginning of Black women getting their voice in politics in the US. So
let's, I know as a New York Times editor, you won't get into politics directly, but you can talk about it. I just want you to reflect what all of this means when you take it in the context of Kamala Harris being named the VP pick. Obviously, we had Hillary Clinton as the presidential candidate and nominee of the party, but some of the history of this goes back to Shirley Chisholm, who was an early candidate in the 1970s for president, ran not on a major party ticket, of course. Please put some of that in context, please. Sure.
So I think that it's funny. I actually have a kids book that came out about Shirley Chisholm this summer as well. It's called Shirley Chisholm is a Verb. She is such a hero of mine. I think that really I saw that someone mentioned the British suffrage movement. And one of the things that we talk about in this issue is that suffragette, which was the term that I was taught, is actually a term that refers largely to British suffragists. In the US, they were called suffragists, which is what the term we use. But Emmeline Pankhurst, who was the sort of radical leader of the suffrage movement in Britain, she had an amazing quote where she said, we don't break laws just to break laws. We break laws because we want to be lawmakers. And that's something that really stuck with me. When you think about the fact that the first woman elected to national office, Jeanette Rankin, a Republican woman, elected 2 years before suffrage passed. I mean, the whole thing is to have voice and to be part of the leadership. And so when you look at suffrage through the lens of Kamala Harris's nomination, it's important because one of the things we wanted to do in the issue, anyone who's been a journalist knows that you have what ends up in the issue and then there's all the things that you just could not fit in. But one of the things that my team and I talked about constantly is we actually wanted to do some sort of graphic that traced how long it had been since a woman had gotten the vote in a country and how long it took for the woman to earn the highest office in the land. And I do think it ended up being complicated for a lot of reasons, and we weren't able to really do it. But I do think that the fact that it was only 100 years ago that women got the vote, and that in 1920, not all American women got the vote, it does show that that it has been a battle all along to have voice, to have to have your say, as the Delaney sisters famously said, and to hold office and be taken seriously. Because one of the things that you learn when you kind of dive into suffrage history is that people actually thought it was ridiculous. Like people, it was 1919 when this goes, you know, Carrie Chapman Cat starts her winning plan. Like, it's not promised. They don't say, oh, next year we'll get it and it's going to happen. It is state by state. It's like this heart thumping thing where, are we going to get it, or is it going to be another 20 years, 30 years? It took, I'm just going to say one more thing because I'm talking a lot, but only one woman who attended Seneca Falls lived to see the ratification of the 19th Amendment. And so it took 3 generations of women, almost 100 years. That is not a history to be taken lightly. And I think through that lens, the nomination of Kamala Harris is very powerful and I think very moving.
Just walk through those dates again for us so we understand that only one woman who was there at Seneca Falls was there to see the ratification. That
vote in 1920. And so basically, the women who started in the 1830s and 1840s, they died not having the vote. Their daughters and nieces and whoever, their young women in their life, took up the battle. Some of them died and did not get the vote. And then the third generation, and you know, often we think about that as Alice Paul, Mary Church Terrell, Ida B. Wells. They are the people who pushed it through. And so it's a long history, and it was many, many women. I think something that I came to feel is that, you know, having been taught of suffrage as this kind of like dowdy women in Victorian dress, holding signs, Kate LeMay, who's a curator at Smithsonian, she says, you know, suffrage needs a relook. We have to think it's not, you know, these boring old women. These are badass political strategists who fought for 100 years to change history in America for women. And that is powerful.
Sunny Slaughter says, I'm almost angered that we're not taught the truth about history. And then Pradnya says, almost, I am pissed, she says. And Paula has put in a link to Shirley Chisholm is a Verb. This is the book that Veronica has written. I don't know how you casually dropped in that you had another book coming out this summer. So that's pretty awesome, Veronica.
Thank you.
And comments are coming in from all over the world. Thank you all for watching. We're going to look more at the, here's what we're looking at. This is Veronica's book, Shirley Chisholm is a Verb. I like that very much. That's pretty cool. And Paula has put in a link right there to the to where you can find the book.
Thank you so much.
All right, so now let's just take a look at the headlines from the special section. The battle for suffrage was waged by an army of women. It took nearly 100 years, it says, victory was never promised. And as you said, it took so long for folks to understand that. Let's talk a little bit about the why people should get this. It's obviously available online, but why they should get this section or today's print paper and hold on to it. nytimes.com/suffrage is the issue that they can find online. And you should see, obviously, look at the rest of my papers kind of untouched. But yesterday we were thumbing through it, Veronica, and that's why this is in pretty bad shape already. That means we had lots to read in here. Tell us what we can find and why people should read this.
Well, the special section, the Print Hub, which is run by Tom Jolly, who I know has been here, it's such a special group of designers. And we were assigned to work with a young woman named Paula Safie. And one of the things she got right away was how suffragists used all of these tools. They used newsletters, they used picketing. And so she wanted to create posters. And so really, you know, one of the first things we did was we were like, okay, if we could make 4 posters, what would they be? And so we wanted to kind of use the tools and the language of suffragists to get some big type moments, big type as in TYPE, to put across some ideas. And that's really different than what's online. I think we're always thinking about the print subscriber and the people who buy the paper online. And we really create these special sections as a gift so that they can thumb through the paper in the old-fashioned traditional way and get something special that's different than what's online.
Thank you so much, folks. Please share this episode with your friends, tag them, hit share right now. Everybody should be watching, if not live, later. This is a poster that explains a lot. Just walk us through this, please.
Sure. So just back to the victory never being promised. 1869, you have Wyoming as the only place in the U.S. where women have full enfranchisement. At that point, Wyoming is a territory, not a state. And so when Wyoming is petitioning to join the Union, one of the things that they that is sort of put forward to them is, well, maybe women don't get the vote. And Wyoming basically holds fast and says, we will not join the Union without women. In Colorado, it's really powerful. One of the people that we learned about and that we highlight is Josephine Pierre Ruffin, who is an African-American woman who moves from Boston to Colorado. She works on a multiracial group of women to get the vote in Colorado. And there's a really interesting thing that happens actually in Milwaukee, where Josephine Pierre Ruffin was a very fair-skinned Black woman. She goes to a suffrage conference run by white women in Milwaukee. She arrives at the train station, and she actually kind of affectionately greets two Black children that she sees there. And the white women, seeing her talk so comfortably to these Black children in the 1800s, they actually they go back to the conference and they basically say, "Are you a Black woman? Why didn't you tell us?" And she says, "I didn't think I had to tell you, and you accepted my application." And they refused to let her be part of the conference. And it's such a huge battle that it's actually written up nationally as the Ruffin incident. And so, so she's just one of the many people that sort of comes forward. So you get Idaho, you get Utah, and then 1919, you need 36 states, 3/4 of the then 48 states to ratify, and the ratification comes in Tennessee. There's a very famous story that Harry Burns, who casts the winning vote for the ratification, he was actually anti-suffrage, and I would love to talk about the women who were anti-suffrage and at some point, but he was anti-suffrage. His mother put a note into his pocket when he was going to vote, and she said basically, "Dear Harry, be a good boy, help Miss Chapman Cap put the rat in ratification." And he is wearing a red rose, which suggests that he's going to vote against suffrage. And because of the note that his mother leaves for him, he actually votes for suffrage and it passes. And the whole, like, Nashville, the Tennessee legislature goes wild, and it is like a scene out of Hamilton. And he's so afraid that he actually sneaks out the back door. So that's how suffrage is won. It's so many crazy stories, powerful stories that I wish we were taught in school, and that we would know that there's multiracial legions of women who work together. I think we're so much taught about racism and the barriers that we're not taught about what people of color and women of color have done to greater help the democracy. It's not just a fight against racism, it's what women of color stand up for that we really need to be taught, and that we wanted to bring forward in this special section.
And here's Deborah. Women did not get the right to vote in Florida until 1969. In 1920, the 19th Amendment was ratified, but not in Florida.
Wow. I didn't know that. Or if I knew it, I forgot it.
Yeah, you've learned so much doing this, right? Keeping track of all the stats. First of all, Courtney says, "I always enjoy when my Sunday includes the New York Times read along. Particularly excited about suffrage at 100. Thank you so much, Courtney, for watching. And everybody, we are here every Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time for an hour and a half or so. Please join us. Please tag your friends. And we haven't missed an episode, and we're coming up on our 5th anniversary. So please tell your friends. Chitra Iyer, who was reading earlier, was watching, she commented that she was surprised that Wyoming was so progressive because, after all, who would have predicted it?
Yeah, I love Chitra. She's an amazing woman.
That's great. And we're so glad to have your friends watching with us. I know you have shared this, Veronica, on your various channels as well. We're very grateful for that. So greetings to all your friends and family watching around the world. If there's anyone in your family you want to give a shout out to, this is a good chance, Veronica.
Oh, thank you. I want to shout out my daughter, Flora, just because I think, we worked so hard on this section, and there were so many weekends where she's like, are you working, and nights, and anyone who's worked in journalism on a project like this knows it's always time away from your family and loved ones. But I really wanted her to have this history, and I'm just so glad that we were able to create something that the young people in our family can look at and learn from and move forward with it.
Patricia says, Veronica, your passion is truly intimidating, I guess, inspirational and beautiful. So that's awesome. We love seeing that. And Sunny says, the best part of the week, there's always something to learn. And just so grateful to everybody who's watching. I want to show this picture that we glanced at earlier from the special section, which shows the suffragist movement. And the first time I heard the word suffragist was watching Mary Poppins. If you remember, Mrs. Banks was a suffragist, and it was, played up to some comedic effect, and the husband being such a misogynist. Tell us about the origin of that word, because it is such an unusual word.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because the Mary Poppins thing is actually, it's such a powerful reference, and the fact that it's played to comedic effect, sorry, I'm losing my words, is very in tune with what we know about suffrage history, is that it was supposed to be funny. It was really considered laughable for many decades, the idea of a woman being able to vote and having that power. And so I think that's just the starting place for it all.
Yeah, and here we are all of these years later. We have got so many comments coming in. Rachel says, could Veronica speak about Suffragist, the musical, from the Public Theater?
Oh, yes, we did a New York Times event with a couple of days ago, the Suffragist Musical, which was written by Shana Taub and directed by Lee Silverstein. It was supposed to open at the public this fall. It has beautiful music. You can actually go to the New York Times events website and you can do a playback of the preview, and they showed 2 songs, and it really concentrates on the conflict between Alice Paul, who was the younger suffragist leader, and the older Carrie Chapman Catt. Alice Paul had spent time in England with Emmeline Pankhurst, and the English movement, the British movement, was far more radical. I mean, they were making bombs and throwing bricks through buildings and hitting police officers. I mean, it was a much more radical movement. And so Alice Paul comes back and she's basically like, okay, gloves off, let's stop being polite. And one of the things that I learned along the way was that suffragists were actually the first people to picket the White House. They decided that they would be the first thing that the president saw when he woke up in the morning and the last thing that he saw at night. And so actually the pin that I'm wearing is it's a replica of a Jailed for Freedom pin. And the suffragists who picketed the White House, they were arrested. They were treated so poorly in prison. They went on hunger strikes. And it was actually the poor treatment and the sacrifice that they made in prison that was one of the things that started to gain sympathy among everyday Americans for the suffrage movement, because you started to see the injustice of how they were being treated by the justice system, and realizing that these were just, polite women who stood silently in front of the White House, and yet the treatment was so brutal. So that's an important part of the history, and it's part of what we get in the Suffragist Musical.
Susan Sawyer says, Black women have had the double fight for the right to vote, feminism, but also racism. And she's giving a hat tip to Veronica. And I'm looking here at a picture of Ida B. Wells Barnett, 1893, the year after she published Southern Horrors, her landmark book about lynching. And tell us her story, and if you can connect it. We're speaking on the 1-year anniversary of the New York Times publishing another major report called the 1619 Project, which we did a big episode around with Sunny Slaughter. And tell us, connect these two threads, please.
Sure. So I think that obviously the 1619 Project is one of the most important things that the New York Times has ever done. And when we came into suffrage a year after that, we were really looking at how race intersects with the suffrage movement. And the big thing that you learn right away is that when the suffrage movement has its roots in abolition, many of the early suffragists were abolitionists. They were for the ending of slavery. But then when the 15th Amendment comes up and Frederick Douglass and others like him are fighting for Black men to get the vote, in large part because they feel like it's a way of not getting the tide turned back towards slavery again, that it's essential for Black people staying free. There's a real move in a kind of tension of, well, how can Black men who were just slaves get the vote before white women? And it really, it breaks apart the suffrage movement, and it really colors it from the late 1800s all the way through 1920. And Black women like Ida B. Wells Barnett are continuously fighting not just for suffrage, but they're fighting against lynching and violence and all of the sort of, you know, I would say, I'm trying to think of the right word, all of the challenges and struggles and really, you know, the Southern horrors that Ida B. Wells writes about that Black people are facing. So all of these movements dovetail with suffrage. So the anti-lynching campaign dovetails with suffrage. Civil rights and everything that Black Americans are trying to get after the end of slavery dovetails with suffrage. Native American land rights, citizenship rights. We write about Native American suffragists like Zitla Sa and Marie Bottineau Baldwin, and as well as Chinese American suffragists like Mabel Pingwa Lee. So all of these rights are dovetailing, as well as working class rights, child labor laws, you know, the Triangle Factory fire, which kills hundreds of men, women, and children, or more than 100 men, women, and children. You start to get working class immigrant women like Rose Snyderman and Margaret Hinchy. They come into the suffrage movement, and all of these people don't come in with one agenda just for the women to vote. They're really looking at equal rights in a lot of complex ways. And that's what makes suffrage history so murky. You know, there's a lot of threads in it, and you really have to detangle and dive into it, but it's also what makes it so interesting.
And we should also point out that the lead author of the 1619 Project, Nicole Hannah-Jones, her Twitter handle is Ida Bay Wells, and that's her Twitter handle, and she's an amazing follow on Twitter, so please check her out as well. And I'm showing those posters you mentioned. There are 4 posters. We're not going to show all of them because we want folks to get the paper, but this is something you can't get online, which is to see this in its all its glory. Women weren't given the right to vote, they won it. And women's demand for a voice in the political process was a radical one, and it took the work of generations of suffragists to make it a reality. And then suffragists were Black and white, Asian and Latinx, immigrant and indigenous, queer and straight, and everything else. Suffragists came from big cities and small towns, the coast and the heartland, and every walk of life. The movement drew diverse communities into its struggle for a more equal democracy. Just stunning to see these put together so well. And you were, tell us the designer again. You were proud of her work.
Yes, Tala Safieh. She's an amazing designer at the New York Times, and she's just someone we're so proud and happy to work with.
And we had a question from Thailand asking if this was available online, and the answer is yes. The link has been shared, and we'll share it again on screen. There you go. This is Dulika's question. She's watching from Bangkok and says, amazing stories is the full special section. Is it available as a PDF, Veronica, or is it done the digital way only?
Yeah, it's done the digital way only, so it's only individual pieces online. So there's not, unfortunately, a full PDF. But if you go to the New York Times social media, you can see the posters and all of that. And I'm actually going to put the posters on my Instagram after the show.
So everyone, please follow Veronica. Another reason to follow Veronica, and there's the New York Times /suffrage is the special section, and she's on Twitter and Instagram, VV Chambers. Now you're going to make me ask about the second V.
It's my middle name, Victoria.
Nice. Excellent. Yeah. Thank you. And shall we move on from this and talk about the rest of the news?
Sure.
All right. So folks, you are watching a special conversation with Veronica Chambers, narratives editor of the New York Times. And what does it feel like to see, we'll talk about print, what does this mean to you, this everything that you see in front of you, arrayed in front of you, the outgoing, departing CEO of the New York Times, Mark Thompson, said he would be very surprised if the paper was around in 20 years in a print format. What does this mean and why is this important? And what would your guess be how long the print section will be around?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, that's I didn't know about that quote from Mark. I do know that, you know, such a large percentage of people read us online. In part, one of the things we talk about is because there's so many readers internationally and nationally. I think it's really powerful. I'm someone, like so many people who work at the New York Times, that I'm on the homepage 5, 6, 10 times a day. And when stories there's just a way, like if you think about kind of that whole old Harry Potter thing of the moving picture, the thing that the digital edition offers you, it offers you a chance to constantly remake page one, so that you might start with the post office and then you might move on to something in national politics. You might move on to something that's happening internationally. You can add breaking news. I mean, I think that's very powerful. At the same time, I'm so in awe of what those special things, like the print section with the excerpt from Elena Ferrante. There's a great Times Insider actually written by Adam Sternberg from the Magazine Labs, who talks about how he got that excerpt and how he worked with the novelist, who is very private and very reclusive, on editing down that section. And I love those kinds of behind the scenes stories. I love the beautiful design. I always love T Magazine and R Magazine and the book review. As someone who reads both books and Kindle, I think that people who love books love holding the book review in their hands. So there's something to all of that.
Cynthia is watching and says a special ciao and thanks from Italy, and she's watching in Milan. Have you been?
Have I been to Milan?
Yes.
Yes, I was actually, many years ago, I was a fellow at the Rockefeller Foundation in Bellagio. And so I got to spend a month there, and Milan was sort of the home base. And I actually used to write for Italian Vogue too, and that's based in Milan. So it's a very special place for me.
I'm sure she's delighted to hear that.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at the print section. The front page of the New York Times. Rate of testing shows first dip since illness hit. U.S. not doing enough, lacking a robust system to extend screening beyond demand. New realities in Mideast pull two rivals closer. How the UAE found a firm ally in Israel. And this is that Postal Service story. And so many folks who work in the Postal Service are women and women of color, men of color. And this is another way of affecting their lives. Video shatters public's image of Hoops Cop. And I'm not sure what the story is. I've not read this yet, so I will have to look this up. I don't know if you've seen this story yet, Veronica?
I have not seen that one yet, but I did know that my father, Antonio Ortega, is a retired member of the Postal Service. So this is a story that's very important to me as well.
Well, we salute him for his work. I think when we talk about first responders and all the heroes of the essential workers of the pandemic, the work they did to bring the mail, you know, the rest of us were scared about what the mail might bring. You know, we were keeping, like we had a box, Veronica, where we kept all the mail for a couple of days before we would open it. But these folks had no choice. They were delivering the mail every single day. And that's their heroism that we should salute.
Yes. Can I also mention that I was looking at the comments, and Wayne Kamadoy, who's one of the lead designers in the print hub at the New York Times, made a comment. Wayne and Fred Bierman, I have to say, when I started at the Times 2 years ago, they just walked me through how we make these special sections, and it's been an amazing learning curve. I think this is probably my 10th or 12th one that I've worked on, and so I just want to give a shout out to Wayne and Fred, because I think one of the amazing things is how much the New York Times really, I mean, you know this from journalism. I spend a lot of time with chefs, and I've written several books with chefs, and we always say, like, you don't learn cooking from a book, you learn cooking side by side at the stoves with great chefs. And I feel like learning how to make these special sections, it's like Wayne and Fred and Tom and Andrew Sondern and all these designers, Carrie G, Tala. It's like cooking side by side with great chefs. I mean, they're like, turn down the fire, make this bigger, do this. And, it's something you couldn't learn from a book. And it is one of the things that I value the most about the work that I do. So.
And Wayne, I think we've asked Wayne to join us in a future edition read along, because we'd love to talk about design with Wayne. Christine is watching. I believe she's in Europe. She's usually in California, I think, but she's in Europe, and she says, "I love the special Vote for Women board game. Wish I could buy a hard copy of the New York Times just for that." And
you can print it though.
Yeah, you can download this game. Is that correct?
Yes, there's a link in the article. You can download the game, and you can print it in color. And you can, the way we made it is that you could, you know how whenever you have Monopoly and you like lose pieces after many years of playing the game, is you can use any small piece as a playing piece. So it's definitely something you can play at home from anywhere.
Excellent. I look forward to checking that out. And let's get back to the paper. Children of Immigrants and the Face of a New America. Not the face, just Face of a New America. This is a wonderful story by Sabrina Tavernese, I think that's how you pronounce her name, about Kamala Harris left with her family in 1970, the story of a single mother who raised her, a single mother from India. Her father's from Jamaica. They met at Berkeley. I wrote a piece this week, Veronica, in Newsday about what it means that she's been selected, and what it means for my family to have someone who looks like a member of my family be elected. I first met Kamala Harris in 2009 and recorded a video that I put online. And what I said to folks is that thank you, Neil is showing the article. There are a lot of ads on that, but thank you for showing that. And one of the things I said is that she's the same person in 2009 when she was district attorney of San Francisco that she is today. And part of what makes her so compelling is her biography and the story of her family, and especially of her mother and her father, and while they did. So you can see all these ads, and a very big photograph. I don't think the Times put such big photographs in the op-ed section, but we're just grateful to be able to think about and write this. I think here's the last line I wrote. To everyone who thinks that Biden and Harris have this race in the bag, you are mistaken. There's a lot of hard work and pain ahead. See some of the online racist attacks, and that's not including what the Russians might do. Everyone must vote. And that is not a political statement to say everyone must vote, because this is the only country in the world that's a democracy where there is an active movement to keep people from voting that comes at the very top. Again, we don't want Veronica to comment on these political issues because she can't as a New York Times editor, but I just want to make that clear to everyone that this is so important that everybody votes. And this postal service and what is happening there is a direct descendant of what slaveholders did by going in to post offices and burning abolitionist literature. Just think about that. That is the legacy that these supporters of attacking the Postal Service are signing on to. And that is why it is all so outrageous and why we must pay attention. My newsletter is srinet.substack.com, and it links directly to my Newsday piece as well. All right, let's go back into the paper. With campus life diminished, why pay for glorified Skype? This is a big question, and I don't know if you have family that's thinking about college or has kids in college right now. The question of paying full tuition has come up with many, many people. And here is that article you mentioned, the inside story of Inside the Times, behind the story, with Elena Ferrante, who is very hard to find. And that special section in the New York Times, there it is. And that's in the Times today as well. Here it is. Shrieks of 55,000 accompany the Beatles. August 16, 1965. Fans of the Fab Four, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr seem not to care that they could barely hear their idols over their own collective din during an appearance at Shea Stadium. Members of the crowd moaned, wept, fainted, producing a sound so massive, shrill, and sustained, the Times reported, that it quickly crossed the line of enthusiasm into hysteria. The show was a sellout, earning the band about $160,000 for its 30-minute performance. And this is this day in history. Memorable day for sure.
There's actually a print that you can buy from the New York Times store of the fans screaming. I just dropped it in the chat.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
One of my favorites. Then I don't know if a lot of people know that almost any of the photographs that you love, you can purchase from the New York Times, and they can actually do custom photographs if it was shot by a Times photographer. It's such a gift.
Wow. I was in the Times my first appearance in the New York Times was in fourth grade for Flag Day. And I was in a photograph in the print edition of the New York Times. And we have that somewhere. And it was just an amazing moment for my family. We love that's not me screaming there, but that's the paper that's the one that she's talking about. But I was in the print paper before I got to write more than 40 articles later in life as a freelancer. Being in a photograph in the New York Times was absolutely amazing. Let's keep going, and everyone should. Sorry, go ahead, Veronica.
Where did you grow up that you were in the New York Times?
Yeah, this was actually, I was born in Tokyo and lived in the Soviet Union, but I landed here in February of 1980 and at PS6 on the East Side, a fabulous school that Lenny Kravitz went to, and Chevy Chase and Richard Avedon.
Wow.
It was a school on 81st Street in Madison, so it was a very, not very economically or racially diverse school. But because my dad was an Indian diplomat, we got to live there. And so I was one of two kids on the federal lunch program at the school. And but Mrs. McAuliffe's class, we were on Flag Day. There was this Indian kid holding a U.S. flag. And our class was on the New York Times that day in 1980. So I've got to go dig that up. I haven't even thought about that in so long.
Yeah, I would love to see that.
And there, speaking of my family, there's my mom watching from Kerala. Hi, Amma, love you. Veronica, I would have been in India already twice or three times this year after the pandemic. If it were not for the pandemic, I was already there in January. How have you been seeing your family, and where are most of your folks?
I haven't been able to see as much of my family as I would like, partly because our parents are older and we've been really concerned about being able to see them. My husband's family is in Philadelphia, and we've done some kind of socially distant lawn visits, but it's very hard because every time convincing my daughter not to hug her grandparents is like a whole thing in the car for 2 hours. Do not hug them, do not hug them, do not hug them. And it just feels very sad. And the rest of my family is in Florida, and it's really difficult to travel there now. So we just do a lot of what everyone does, Zooms and FaceTimes, all that.
I'm so sorry. It must be so painful to do that. Tell us about hubby.
Oh, my husband, Jason Clampett, is a co-founder with Rafat Ali of a travel media brand called Skift.com. And when I told him I was going to be on this show, it's so funny, suffrage. He's like, yeah, that's cool. And then I told him I was going to be on Street's show, and he's like, oh my God, we love Street. So you actually made me cooler in my house today.
Well, Jason's awesome, and Skift is an amazing brand, which shows what you can do as an independent. We obviously celebrate the New York Times and print and everything, but Rafat Ali and Skift and Jason have really made kind of niche topic journalism, not so niche, but kind of specialized journalism into something very special, and especially covering an industry when there's so much pain. Of all the industries that have been attacked by coronavirus, this is probably the one that suffered the most. And I had Rafat on very early edition, episode number 7 of my daily program. We're now on episode 158.
Wow.
So that tells us how much things have changed. And Neil, maybe there's a good chance to just tell everyone what we have coming up tonight. Neil is going to be joining me as we do a very special episode. It's not just the 100th anniversary, as you know, of the suffragist movement, but Neil, tell us what's coming up.
Absolutely. In addition to being the 100th anniversary of the suffragist, of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, it's also the 100th anniversary of the Negro Leagues baseball, which is just incredible. Bob Kendrick, who is the head of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, will be our guest on Shree's daily global show focusing on COVID-19, the Shree COVID-19 call. So Bob will be with us at 9 p.m. It's really an incredible story in terms of the work of the museum. They were kicking off their anniversary celebrations in February. They had a huge event with Major League Baseball, and then in less than a month, everything shut down. And we're going to hear from them of how they persevered through the shutdown, what they did to reopen. And then, today, Major League Baseball is doing a salute to the Negro Leagues using the hashtag Negro Leagues 100. So there are all sorts of celebrations, and the teams are doing various events. And Bob has agreed to join us today of all days on Shree's COVID-19 call. So we're certainly looking forward to that. And I hope you all can join us.
And we should point out, because folks have asked this, are we allowed to say that word? And this is the word that's used that's what the league was called. And this is in tribute to the league, the museum, the 100th anniversary. And words matter, of course, and we want to be careful, but this is the word that is used by the museum itself. And some people may be surprised by that. And I already got at least 2 queries on it. So that's what we're doing. So please join us 9 p.m. Eastern on all my social channels, as well as the social channel of scroll.in. So check that out. And Neil will return to help produce that and to interview Bob. I'm a baseball fan, but Neil is a baseball fan. And wearing his Yankees cap, he will be joining us at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So please join us. You can watch us live or later for all of this. And here are so many comments coming in. We haven't had a chance to go through all of them. Cynthia says, you must come again to Milan and visit the women's bookshop. I guess there is one in Milan. And she says it's also the kind of the hub of feminism. Milan is for Italy. So that's pretty cool. And so many other comments coming in as well from all over the world. We're all learning so much. Let's go back to the paper. And I'm just looking down here. Coronavirus has made Brazil an ideal vaccine lab, because obviously there's so much going on there, starting with the president. Connecticut inmate hanged himself with protective mask. Prison officials say, oh my God, how is that? It seems so unlikely, because the masks, unless they had some kind of very tough mask. But what a story. And we've covered the justice system and the problems in it for so long. We've been covering it. We had a guest on our show who had been in prison for 40 years, Otis Johnson, and he lost his family. In the meantime, he hasn't been able to find them. And so we were helping him try to find his family. All the archives you can find at youtube.com/SreeNet, including the archives of the read along. And hi, Monica Drake. Monica says, thank you. Monica was the first New York Times person to be a guest on this show. And we're so grateful to her for helping us talk about the world of the New York Times. She's been on it more than once. Now she's been promoted and moved up from travel editor. And she's great. And in case she didn't hear the greeting, Veronica, you have a chance to do it again.
Yes, I just wanted to say, being on the special projects team that's run by Monica Drake is just one of the highlights of my career. And when people say, oh my God, how did you guys do 5 events for suffrage, a virtual play that we're doing on Tuesday night, a print special section, a book, it's like, because Monica always says, like, think big, do what you want. She like helps us think through ideas on like both a macro and a micro level, and she makes everything better. And it's an incredible team that she's put together. It's always hard work and it's always fun, and that's, I think in journalism, that's kind of a sweet spot that you don't always get to.
And I'm just so proud of Monica, former student at Columbia Journalism School, who's gone on to incredible things, but also just the nicest person. And that's not always the case when people are super successful, but she's the same person I knew a few years ago. We won't reveal how many years we go back, but people can guess. All right, let's talk about 2 stories I see in the paper about 2 of my former employers' industries. Yeah. One is museums, lockdown of museums to be lifted with limits. So that's big news in New York. I was the chief digital officer of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, a honor of a lifetime to have that job. And here, a story about New York City and my former boss, the mayor of New York. As de Blasio pushes New York City schools forward, principals start to push back. And this is something that people have been paying attention to. And Eliza Shapiro is the author of this piece, and Julia Jacobs, the author of the other. Can you talk about your daughter's school without obviously revealing school names and things? How is she preparing?
Well, she's preparing, but I'm moving to the London Bureau of the Times this fall. So I'm actually kind of looking at 2 school situations, both New Jersey and what's going on here and what will be happening when we get to England. So I follow this news very carefully. And I have to say, Eliza's reporting on schools is extraordinary. I mean, it's a real service that's happening. And I believe that the New York Times is going to be launching a newsletter on schools and parenting. So I don't have all the details because it's not my department, but that's definitely something that people should look forward to. And also the parenting newsletter, which is run by Jess Gross, is great. And my daughter's a little older, but I still parents have been under such pressure. And I think that the parenting newsletter that the Times does a great job of capturing the stresses as well as the creative solutions that parents across the country are coming up with to this unprecedented time.
And well, first, congratulations on the London news. How exciting. Foreign correspondent for the New York Times, moving to London. So are you giving up the narrative editor job?
No, that was actually part of my promotion. So I literally was just promoted 2 weeks ago. So it's all very new. But so my title before was senior editor. So now I'm editor of narrative projects, which just kind of makes me more officially in charge of multi-platform, ambitious journalism storytelling. And I'll be working both with the team in New York, but because of the global ambitions for the brand, I'll be doing some big ambitious projects with some of the teams abroad as well. And I'm really excited about that.
It's always exciting to talk to foreign correspondents. And I know when I was at Columbia Journalism School, London bureau chief, New York Times, Paris bureau chief, we had Elaine Sciolino with us last week. She was awesome. And the life of a foreign correspondent is glamorous, but I can't imagine it's very glamorous trying to move during a pandemic.
Yeah, it's a lot, but it's exciting. And, you talked about being a child of immigrants, and my family's from Panama. And I just, I lived in France the year before my daughter was born. And it's exciting to think about going abroad again. I think I'm always thinking internationally because of my family. And it just feels like a great opportunity. And London is one of the biggest bureaus that the Times has. So I'm excited about getting to know all the colleagues there too.
Look at all the congratulations coming in, including Ron Thomas, who lives in Dubai. He sat at this desk in January as a guest in person, one of the last in-person ones we were able to do. And he's watching from Dubai. So he understands what it's to be from New Jersey and be an international traveler and an expat. And I saw congrats from Mark and Pradnya. And we also have the official press release on Veronica's promotion has been thrown in there by Paula. And here's the parenting newsletter that you were discussing. So there's a lot going on and a lot to absorb.
Yeah.
We've about 20 minutes or so left with Veronica. So we've only made it to page 8 of the front section. So we're going to be here for about 4 or 5 hours. I hope you are settled in for a long day. Japanese politicians mark war anniversary at contentious shrine. This is about the anniversary of the end of World War II, and of course, this is the 75th anniversary of the bombings at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Leader of Belarus turns to Putin as protests rage. There was a wonderful quote in the CNN reporting on this, and maybe here as well, when Lukashenko of Belarus, who has been accused of fixing the elections and winning with 80% of the vote, Russia level type voting, he said, I don't want any interference from foreign folks who said that, maybe we can look at the voting and the election process. And then he said, I have spoken to Putin. So he's willing to talk as long as it's to Putin. And we are going in here with Trump on the attack. China softens its tone in hopes of a truce, and COVID poses new hurdle to surrogacy in the Ukraine. And this is we hear about Ukraine only in context of what's been happening with Russia and the U.S. the U.S. politics, but this is an interesting story about surrogacy in the Ukraine, and so much else going on here. National section, and jump in, Veronica, if you have a thought on any of these, or you just want to take a break and drink some water, you're welcome to do that. Nature delivers a blow to a region already bleeding. Story about corn crops in Iowa. And video shatters image of a basketball cop. This is, I guess, the heroic basketball cop, and some video has come out about him. Again, I don't know enough about it, but look how big the story is. Started on page 1 and is on 2 pages inside the paper. And that's one of the things that people don't understand, that you don't get a sense of how big a story is when you read it online. It's only when you see it laid across 2 pages that you really understand that. Washington Zoo is looking for a stork with a baby panda. Mei Zhang has given birth to 3 cubs who all live in China. So I guess we want one here in Washington. Teen is accused of killing neighbor to be TikTok famous. What a awful story. 3 Mississippi officers are charged with murder. Court rejects state's ban on large capacity magazines. So much news and so little time to get through it all. We're hoping that folks will have a chance to read all of this and talk. And protesters in Georgia face off in shadow of Confederate shrine. That's the Stone Mountain, Georgia. And Trump says he will consider a pardon for Snowden, who is in Russia, in Moscow right now. Speaking, as we did earlier, about Amy Padnani and the obituaries section. She's the obituary editor. Kurt Ludke, 80, newspaper executive turned Hollywood screenwriter, dies. He is a former journalist who won an Oscar for Out of Africa, a movie I remember. I haven't seen in a long time. And he also wrote Absence of Malice, a movie I do remember very clearly because we used to show this multiple times at Columbia Journalism School to understand the impact that journalists have on their subjects. And it says here, the idea became Absence of Malice, a damning look at journalistic ethics, starring Paul Newman and Sally Field. Have you seen that movie?
I actually haven't, but now that you say it, I definitely want to look it up.
And this is the kind of thing that if it's running on one of the streaming platforms, they should respond to the news and put that out so that people can see it and resurface it. Terry Cannon, creator of quirky baseball shrine, has died. He was just 66. With some of the baseball memorabilia at the baseball reliquary. This is a word I've seen obviously so many times I haven't pronounced it, I guess. Was established in the 1990s. And we happen to have 2 white men here, but the Times is really focused on getting women and women of color and men of color onto their obits. Lacrosse plays on, facing tough choices. Here's the sports section. And speaking of baseball, I want to note, since you are from Panama, that the great New York Yankee, Mariano Rivera, is from Panama. And Neil is getting super excited about that thought right now.
Yes, my family is definitely a baseball-loving Panamanian family.
I've been to the Panama Canal, and I've been to Panama, and I've taught workshops there. The funny story about that is about journalism and the Panama Canal. We had 400 journalists, and the director of the Panama Canal decided to do, so we all wanted to go, obviously, to see the Panama Canal,
Right.
and he had us all captive. So he decided he's going to do an hour-long presentation in PowerPoint with, dozens and dozens of words on the screen that were impossible to follow. And it was between us and the reception. And that if you've got an event, you want to get to the drinks and the food and the camaraderie. But it made me hate PowerPoint. And that was, 20 years ago. And now so much of life is these decks and Google Slides and everything else. So I wrote about that. But I loved Panama. I was there for too short a time, like 2.5 days, but loved every minute. Great country, and hope to return.
Yeah, me too. I can't wait till I can go back.
All right, you get to pick where we go next. We have about 15 minutes with you, a little over 15 minutes. Where do you want to go?
Just talking about our colleagues' work, I just want to drop something in the chat. Samini Sabgupta, has she been on the show?
Not yet, but Somini's a dear friend from many, many years. Yeah.
Yeah, she's doing a great series on heat and the heating, the rising heat in the planet. And I just think this moment, I think the climate coverage at the Times is so powerful. And these are just, these pieces, talk about the difference between digital and print. I think this piece isn't in the Sunday paper, but it's the way that you experience it online. It's just so powerful to me. And I feel like I'm learning every day from. And
there's her byline, Somini Sengupta. She is terrific. And is her title like climate correspondent?
Yeah, I think international climate correspondent. And also following her on Twitter is great. Yeah,
she's awesome. Everyone should follow her. And Somini, if you're watching, we'd love to have you come on the air and discuss on a read along. So you pick now which section you would like to go to, please.
Maybe book review. I love the book review.
Okay, yeah, you're an author of how many books did you say?
I've written a lot of books. I've written more than a dozen books for kids and more than 10 books for adults. So, and I've co-written.
How is that possible? You started as a kid, is that right?
Yeah, I started very young. I went to college when I was 16 at Bard at Simon's Rock, and I graduated when I was 20, and I wrote my first book at 21. So
can I tell you something? This is so embarrassing.
Yes.
When we saw this and I saw the Shirley Chisholm book, I thought this was like a collection of books about, I didn't know what this collection was. So I didn't notice that these are all books by you, which is, I thought this was like an ad for books by the New York Times or something. So you wrote a book about Michael Strahan, Shirley Chisholm, Beyonce, Meals, Music, and Muses, Recipes from My African-American Kitchen by Alexander Smalls, for colored girls who have considered politics, 32 Yolks by Eric Ripper. This is amazing to see this. And you wrote Marcus Samuelson's memoir. Yeah. That is just stunning to see. Well, it's still going. Oh my God. There's the B word in the house. Tell us what that book is about.
Oh, that book is actually, it was an anthology edited by my dear friend, Kathy Hanauer. And Kathy's husband, Dan Jones, edits the Modern Love column at the New York Times. Oh. And and that book is really about women and relationships. But I'm really proud of the Yes Chef because I won a James Beard Award for that. And then Between Harlem and Heaven, which is a book about the intersection between Asian American and African American cooking and the sort of the pathways of rice. And that book won Best American Cookbook at the James Beard last year.
That is amazing. We can't even find all of these books because we're looking at so many things at one time. It's so where is that? So this is all on your website that you can find this list. Yeah. Stunning stuff. My son is an enthusiastic amateur cook who loves Asian cooking and we love going out to Harlem to eat. So I'm going to definitely get him that book.
Yeah.
And
JJ Johnson's Field Trip. JJ was my co-author, and he has a restaurant in Harlem that's all about rice, and it's called Field Trip, and it's great.
Field Trip? Okay. we've got to go to that. You just said the magic word, rice.
I know. I'm Panamanian, and you mentioned my husband, Jason, and the first time he went to Florida to meet my mother, she had made arroz con pollo and, all these different things. And he goes, no rice for me. And my mom looks at me like, you did not say you were going to marry this man who said no thank you to rice. It was a drop down, throw down moment. And he was just like, no, I'll just have some of the salad and some. My mom's looking at me like, what is going on in this house? So rice is very important to me. I write about it a lot.
Pradnya says, oh my God, I need to read so many of this. And that's great. So we will finish the story. What does he eat rice now, or are they still friends?
He not only eats rice, but in Panama, I forget what it's called in other cultures, but in Panama, the best part of the rice is when the rice sticks to the pan and gets really crispy on the bottom. We call it hunkalan. And he actually has perfected a method for making, I guess they call it tadig in like Persian cooking, but he makes like this perfectly crisp bottom of rice with like a little mirin and oil, and so that it gets brown and crunchy at the bottom. So it's the reason why we're still married today.
Neil Genslinger says, holy moly, that's a lot of books. Neil was a early guest on the New York Times Read Along. He's a fabulous colleague of yours, and would love to have Neil back in the months ahead. Marcy says, can I just repeat how amazing Veronica Chambers is? Clearly. And Laura Silverman says she loves the books with Eric and Marcus. So that's awesome. Seriously, just one, I think, just now, I think can't get me better. It does get any better. This is awesome stuff. Thank you so much. Thank you, Patricia, for watching and being a great supporter of the show. And everybody check out veronicachambers.com. And we haven't even opened the book review yet. You distracted me, Veronica.
Sorry. I didn't mean to.
That's a lifetime of work, and you've already packed it all in, and now you're going to be London bureau chief of the New York Times.
I'm not going to be bureau chief.
Sorry, London. Sorry, you're going to be in the London bureau. Sorry.
Yeah.
London.
I don't want to get fired before I start.
That was London bureau. She's going to be in the London bureau. She's a narratives editor, and she's going to be there. And you should have seen her off camera saying, "Oh my God, I'm not the." I was looking at her off camera as she said that. But thank you so much, Veronica, for being here. We have those few minutes left. We're going to just look at the book review. Edward P. Jones by A.O. Scott, The American Writers Who Show Us Who We Are, is the cover here. And so many books in here to talk about. We won't have time.
That piece is really extraordinary. A.O. Scott is the film critic, of course, and I love the work of Edward P. Jones, but I do think that in this moment where we continue to be more in than out, I think that the time we spend with books and revisiting books is really powerful. So, and
here is the Plutocrats, a look at books by Robert Reich, the former Secretary of Labor, The System, Who Rigged It, and How We Fix It, and Break 'em Up. Recovering Our Freedom from Big Ag, Big Tech, and Big Money by Zephyr Teachout. She was here at dinner a few years ago on this table as we had dinner, and she's also in my newsletter today. We mentioned her and her work, so check that out. So much to read. Just this one section has so much to read. And do you know the theme song of Mariano Rivera when he comes on?
No, I don't.
So Enter Sandman is his song from Metallica. Neil will correct me if I'm wrong, but there's The Sandman by Neil Gaiman and Dirk Maggs. I
love Neil Gaiman's work.
Yeah, he's great. And here's Beach Reads. So much to read here, so much to look at. Saumya Dave has a book called Well-Behaved Indian Women. I presume this book is the characters in the book are anything but. I hope that's the case. Proud Tradition of Disobedience in American Foreign Policy, Rogue Diplomats. My dad will love that book. He's a former diplomat himself. Let's just very quickly just move past all of this and just look at what are the best-selling books. And you'll tell us if you've had a chance to read any of this. I can't imagine you have time to read anything, but the number of top 5 fiction books: Deadlock by Catherine Coulter, First Case by James Patterson, Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens, The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett, and The Order by Daniel Silva. And over here, Too Much and Never Enough by Mary Trump. We should note that Robert Trump, her uncle, who tried to stop the publishing of her book and is the president's younger brother, died at 71 last night. White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder. How to Be Anti-Racist by Ibrahim X. Kendi, supposed to be a fabulous book. Untamed by Glennon Doyle. And there's even a book by Alex Trebek here. It's called The Answer Is by Alex Trebek.
Yes.
Note to our team, we've got to get Alex Trebek to talk about his book with us. All right, we somehow it turned out that my New York Times Magazine has either been taken by someone in my family or it didn't make it into the print section today in the yesterday. So I don't have it with me, but Neil has the story of the cover of the magazine, so we can take a look at that. This is a special section of the magazine, an excerpt about Elena Ferrante's new book. So let's take a look at the magazine cover. Neil will pull that up in just a minute. In the meantime, oh, there we go.
From the New York Times Magazine,
this is behind the cover.
Our cover story this week by Robert Draper is an exclusive report on the many battles between President Trump and the U.S. intelligence services. In particular, this story concerns a classified document written last year that has never been reported on, which discusses, among other things, Russia's efforts to interfere in the 2020 election.
We reached out to Doug Mills, who's a staff photographer for the New York Times and has covered the White House since 1983. It was a kind of fluid process where he was sending us images and we were putting them in cover templates. We were looking for ways to give the impression of things being hidden or not getting the complete picture.
One of the ways to indicate that would be through the kind of visual language of redaction.
Yeah. We tried a number of options. Some were pretty closely associated with the idea. Others were much more abstract.
This story is about the shaping of intelligence, and so it just establishes the kind of atmosphere of a world in which information can be both concealed and revealed.
Yes.
This extraordinary reporting by Robert Draper has opened a window into a world that often remains unknown to those outside. This story shows the degree to which the tension between Trump and the intelligence community has reshaped the way that intel is disseminated in this country.
Wow. I want to tell everybody, I don't think even our team knows yet, but Robert Draper will be my guest on my daily New York Times, my daily COVID-19 show this coming Thursday at noon Eastern. Thursday, noon Eastern. Follow me on Twitter @Sri, on Facebook, SriNet, and on YouTube, SriNet, and on LinkedIn. Please find me. Please connect with me. Noon, Robert Draper, who wrote that cover story in the New York Times Magazine, will be my guest. You will learn a lot, as will I. So please tune in for that. Let's go back to our friend Veronica Chambers, who's with us today, and look at arts and leisure, if we can. And the cover story is about Second City, it's an improv powerhouse that apparently has a lot of racism in it. I did not know that. Is that something you had been familiar with or heard about, Veronica?
You know, I didn't know about that. I mean, I think comedy is such an interesting world. And, you know, when you think about the moments that great comedians have had over the last, 3 or 4 years, even in that sense of being truth tellers, it's interesting to see a story that aims to tell a greater truth about the industry itself.
Cracking codes in the everyday. Sanford Biggers makes wrenching sculptures transformed by gunfire and radically altered quilts. And that's my friend Siddharth Mitter, who I've not talked to in a long time, his byline in the New York Times. And there's A.O. Scott. Why can't we still care about bicycle thieves? Plural. The movie I thought was The Bicycle Thief. Maybe there's another movie called Bicycle Thieves. I'm not sure. And here, Second City's race problem is out in the open. Second City has gotten so much attention, obviously. Making television amid a pandemic. What are you watching these days? Again, I don't believe Veronica Chambers watches any television because she has no time.
I do watch TV. I love that story, the blues song story. I love the music coverage. I mean, the whole arts and leisure section is always really good, but I love that story in particular. I am actually obsessed with the Umbrella Academy. We're big comic book fans in our family, so I've been so moved at how I love the diversity of the siblings in the Umbrella Academy, and I
Yes.
love the way they took it back to the 1960s. I was just saying to my husband yesterday that it is really one of the first shows that has really made me understand that time through the lens of a diverse group of people in a way that doesn't feel very billboardy. It feels very subtle and emotional and personal, and I think it's amazing. So that's been my treat at the end of
Great.
the night.
And we've seen the first season. I believe the second season is just coming out, or
Yeah.
has come out. Talk
Yeah.
a little bit about the at-home section and the origin of it. It supplanted several other sections that were then spread out throughout the paper, and it's a whole new envisioning of covering the pandemic.
Yes. There's a funny thing on that page I can tell you. The New York Times. So the New York Times lifestyle coverage is headed by Sam Sifton, who's the great editor who heads food, and Sam, along with Amy Vership from travel. When you mentioned that the travel industry has been highly impacted by the pandemic, so the print edition of Travel is on hold, and we have At Home, and there's a lot of great things in there. There's actually on that calendar on the second page of At Home, I'm actually going to be doing a crafting suffrage embroidery class next Saturday with a company called craftjam.co, and it's on the second page of the At Home section, a notice about the class, and we're going to be crafting different embroideries about suffrage. So it's right there on the 22nd. There's that Ida B. Wells and a needle illustration. So,
And it says womensactivism.nyc/share, womensactivism.nyc. So that looks like, there's Ida B. Wells. There she is. Yep. So check that out. Your name's not in there, so thank you for pointing it out. Otherwise, we wouldn't have known. Deck out your back porch. Wait, college is on campus. Still, don't panic. The opposite is also happening. Columbia College announced that it's going to be entirely online this week. This is one, I live in a home where I'm blessed that I have wonderful cooks. My twins and my wife are awesome cooks. So I'm only asked to do one meal a week. I'm so blessed to be with them. So I use Sam's selection here. Usually it's Sam, but this time it's Margot Lasky, and 5 dishes to cook this week. So I only have to pick one, and I'm able to do that. So I have the entire collection. I tear this out and keep it for the week when I make dinner. Sneak in some exercise. Yes, we're moving less, but on Zoom, no one has to know you're doing squats. In my newsletter this week, our friend Bob Anthony at New York Bob has some tips on Zoom and buying a little privacy cover so that you can just kind of close out. You can see it here on my laptop. See this little privacy cover? So useful to have. And this was given out by the Knight Foundation at the Online News Association conference, but you can see the value of having one. So he said the number one rule of Zoom, always wear pants, because you never know when you will be standing up and might get in trouble. Okay, let's look at the Sunday review. We have another couple of minutes only. Black Lives Next Door, a new generation of activists is trying to figure out where to concentrate its efforts. Residential desegregation is the final frontier. And here is Dear Kamala Harris set of letters, the milestone and the myth called the 19th Amendment. I presume the editorial board did not talk to you about this, but they're marking the 100th anniversary as well. So have you read this yet?
I haven't read that yet. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it, though. It's a beautiful illustration.
Yep. You know all of these women. Unfortunately, I don't. But or unless they are, I presume some of them are historical at least. The great leaders of 2020 are part of a club. The University of Delaware, Joe Biden's alma mater. The power of poor voters. Graduates of public universities stepped into Trump's leadership void is the previous story. The power of poor voters. If they turn out, they can transform the nation's politics. And Learning to Love Joe Biden by Jennifer Senior. And there he is. and his story. And then finally, just look at the Sunday Style section. The Velvet Rope of Rapid Tests. Have you had a test yet, or anyone in your family?
People in my family have. I have not yet.
Yeah.
So we've been really lucky. We've been sequestered and healthy.
Yeah. Where did you go to school? Tell us a little bit about college.
I went to Bard at Simon's Rock in Great Barrington, which is an early college, and now there are Bard high school colleges in New York and New Jersey, and it was a great experience. So.
Wonderful. Okay, so one of the things I'm going to do is I love reading the Social Cues column by Philip Glanz.
Yes.
And he's awesome. So I'm going to read one of these. You know, there's no right or wrong answer, but I'm going to read the question and then hear your answer, and then we'll read the answer, and then we'll be done.
Okay.
Angry on my behalf. I'm a young Black woman who's been quarantined with my white boyfriend for months. It's been mostly great for us as a couple. When we visit his family nearby, they often ask me about the Black Lives Matter protests in which we're participating. I find them genuinely interested, respectful, and curious about why expressions like all lives matter are racist. I'm happy to engage, but my boyfriend gets furious with them. He turns simple questions into big fights. What am I missing? That was Nikki's question, and we'll read Philip's answer, but I want to hear yours.
Well, I think that's a great question to choose. I think as someone in an interracial marriage, there is this moment, and Black Lives Matter has been really challenging. I mean, it sounds like her boyfriend wants to make sure that she doesn't have to do the work of educating his family. And so I think his anger is probably sounds like his way of protecting and standing up for her, as opposed to something else. It actually sounds kind of gallant. I think one of the hardest things for me has been the sense that for some of my white friends and maybe some of the white extended members of our community, Black Lives Matter and police brutality continues to be something they're like, I'm so sorry you have to go through this. And and the separation from it that some people feel really makes me uncomfortable and exhausted. So it goes many ways. That was a very frank answer, but.
And I love the frank answer. And Pradnya says, hooray for interracial couples. Mm-hmm. And in your case, not just interracial, but inter-rice couples. That was where you won him over on the rice side, right?
Yeah.
So let's read Philip's answer. I love your willingness to talk about race with people who may not have considered it much before our current reckoning in the wake of George Floyd's horrible death. But I've received so many letters from readers of color who feel legitimately burdened by their white friends' newfound and seemingly insatiable interest in racism. Your boyfriend may feel protective of you or embarrassed that his family is treating you like an expert witness on blackness. They could do some work too, right? A simple Google search could explain how the phrase all lives matter robs the protests against anti-Black racism of the specific point. It's not your job to educate the family. And so I think, and he goes on a little bit more, but that's great to see Philip's answer as well. And Veronica, we are our friend Sunny Slaughter, who was our guest for the 1619 Project, was also here in the aftermath of the George Floyd killing. And when we talked to her, she said, don't ask your Black friends what you can do now. Ask yourself, what have you been doing all these years, right? Your Black friends are not, their job is not to educate you on everything about racism suddenly because you're paying attention. This is something you should have paid attention to. And you make the point, I think, very importantly, that this is not just affecting Black people, this is affecting everybody. And just when you say all lives matter, that is taking away, as Philip says, from the power of Black Lives Matter. Lots of comments coming in here, and Sunny says exhausted. She said is definitely exhausted and thinking about and people who think we should not talk about us Black are irritating. She says, and so many other comments coming in as well, and a link to the etiquette columnist as well as the ethicist columnist. All of that's coming in, and we may not get to the poem today, but we want to make sure it's shared here. This is the poem of My Father Disappears into Flowers. As I said, for the first time in 25 years plus of subscribing to the New York Times, the magazine somehow didn't make it. So we have to I love reading the poem out loud, but we don't have time today. So we'll call it a end here of the show, but I'm going to ask our friend Veronica to just share a few words, final thoughts about the suffragist movement, about reading the paper with us, and what she would like to leave us with.
I am so happy to have been here today and all of your comments. I'm not on Facebook, so I wasn't commenting, but I want to thank everybody for all of their thoughts. I think for me, the thing that I take away from the suffrage movement is that suffragists were really futurists. They fought for the vote, not just for themselves, because so many of them did not get it in their lifetimes, but they fought for it for the future of women and the democracy. And as I have engaged with this work, I have become a little bit of a futurist myself. I think about the work that I'm doing and really trying to put effort into things, not just for today, but for the generations that are coming. And I hope that's what we get from this coverage, a sense that our work matters, and it matters way past us.
That is a wonderful note on which to end. Our guest has been Veronica Chambers, author and contributor to more than 20 books. She's a narrative editor, a narratives projects editor of the New York Times. She's moving to London in the middle of a pandemic. And I'm hoping that once she's settled in and over the next year or so, she would come back and talk to us about some of her other great projects that I'm sure are ahead. Here are some comments coming in. Ron says, this show, I can't say enough about it. It's such a learning session each and every week. Wow, wow, wow. Well, Ron is putting his money where his mouth is by sponsoring us. And we encourage anyone who's watching who'd like to be a guest or be a sponsor or participate in some way, collaborate. We'd love to have more people in the world watch this. We have several thousand people who watch every week, but we want even more people to join us. Cynthia has been watching from Milan this whole time, and she says, thank you, Veronica and Sri. So many great comments coming in, just so delighted. Love on that focus on the future. Thanks for a great show, says Laura, was also a guest on our show. Veronica, you're incredible and inspiring, says Pratnya. Those last three people have all been guests on this show, which tells you something about the community we've built. Sujana, who is our doctor on our show that starts at 11 that I have to go produce, we'll do an ad for it in just a minute, says, amazing show as always. Thank you, Veronica. And I'm curious about the pictures behind you. We won't be able to do a full tour of those pictures, but
yes,
what are those photos behind you?
Oh, it's Gillian Law. This way is it's boys in South Africa. And this is my beloved Malik Sidibe. It's Christmas Eve in Mali.
Beautiful pictures. Thank you very much for sharing them. And everyone, please follow Veronica. She's at VV Chambers, and she's veronicachambers.com. NewYorkTimes.com/suffrage is the special section that she edited and put together with her colleagues. And we got so many great comments throughout the show. If you're watching with us for the first time, please join us every single Sunday, 8:30 a.m. We celebrate the print New York Times, and we are looking forward to our 5th anniversary coming up in October. We're planning to do some epic shows, so we want some suggestions from people as we get ready for the elections as well. Ellen says, terrific show. Thank you, Veronica. We love getting these greetings, so tell us where you're watching from. Mark says, great show. And he was curious about those photographs as well. Already following her on Twitter, and several people have said they're ordering the books, so that is great as well. veronicachambers.com for all the books that one person has written in her lifetime, more than the lifetime of most other people. Sunny says, already done. Thanks so much, says Jean Person Williams. And Ismail Nafria says, really great show today. Thanks, Sri and Veronica and all the team. And it is really a team effort. Veronica, I'm going to let you go and get back to your day. Apollo's watching from Vegas early in the morning, 7:30. Can't wait to watch the replay. He was a guest on our COVID-19 show. He talked about what it's like to live in Vegas under COVID, but also what it's like to be a Black man living in India when he was visiting and spending time there. And Jonathan Borstein, great show. Jonathan's also been a guest every single day. We do a daily show and this Sunday show. Please join me 9 p.m. Eastern for our daily show. And Stefan says, Veronica, thank you for all your incredible work and for sharing all of what you're doing. And Ron says, the A-team. So thank you very much, Veronica. Goodbye and have a great day and travel safe, move safe. I know I moved to 8 countries as a kid. and it's an amazing experience for your daughter. It'll be its own adventure, and she'll never forget. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And thank you for the whole read-along team. It's been great.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Wow, what a read-along. I am so thrilled that we could bring Veronica Chambers to you on the day of the special edition. We thought she may have to join us another time, but she was able to join us. And we have a great show coming up next week as well. So let's promo that. And Therese says, incredible show today. Thanks so much. Thanks so much. Learned so much. And Therese is also a former guest on both of our shows, the Daily Show as well as the weekly read-along. And hi, Neil.
Hey, Shri. So we have a great show today. Next week, John Byrne, the founder and editor-in-chief of poetsandquants.com, and the former executive editor of Business Week, and the former editor-in-chief of both businessweek.com and Fast Company, will be our guest. Absolutely incredible career. Not only is he a big Sinatra fan, which we'll hear about, but Shri, can you guess his favorite baseball team?
Oh, he loves the Milwaukee Brewers, I hear.
Yeah, I think you were looking at Mark's comment. John is a huge Yankees fan as well, so we're going to have a great time with him next week. But he has an incredible background, and we're looking forward to having him on the show. We also want to recognize Shri. As you mentioned earlier, the She's on Call is going to be starting at 11 a.m., right?
And we have a terrific panel today. Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar and Dr. Marina Kurian are the hosts of this show that I executive produce, playing Neil's role. It's called She's on Call. And these two surgeons have guests, and they talk about COVID-19 and so much more. Today, they're focused on children. And we have a transcontinental show. Dr. Ananta Dave is with us. She's the president of the British Indian Psychiatrists Association. She'll talk about what's happening in child psychiatry. And the president-elect of the American Association of Physicians from India, a pediatric anesthesiologist, will be with us. Dr. Anupama Gotimukula will be with us. So 11 a.m. to 12 Eastern. Please check this out every single Sunday at She's on Call on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, etc. And you can go back and watch those episodes to see these fantastic doctors talking to other women doctors and then the occasional male doctor as well. So check that out at She's on Call.
I'm particularly interested in this week's show, Shri. My first job out of college was as the legislative director for the American Association of Physicians of Indian origin, about 30,000 physicians around the country. So I'll definitely be looking forward to tuning in today. Before we go and before we let you go prep for that show, we do want to thank our sponsors one more time.
Muckrack Academy, they helped us put together this Fundamentals of Social Media course, free certification now available, mrac.co/social, mrac.co/social. Please join us as a sponsor. Please take this course. More than 4,000 people have taken this course, and you get a printable certificate that you can get as well.
Absolutely. And in addition to Muckrack, we also want to thank Strategy Focus Group. Ron Thomas was watching most of the show. Thank you as always, Ron. Strategy Focus Group is a global team of human capital strategists committed to helping organizations solve people issues within your organization. They do that by working alongside you to solve your toughest problems and helping you capture your greatest opportunities. We certainly would like to encourage you, if you're interested in being a sponsor, please contact Shri. His email is shri@shri.net, and my email, neil@neilparekh.org. And we'd also like to make sure you see their websites. You can find more information about them at readalong.link/muckrack and readalong.link/strategy focus groups. Those links are at the bottom. We'll close, Shri, by doing one more shout out, if you don't mind, to our great production team. Because people made comments about this during the show. So I don't want anyone to underestimate the amount of work it takes to put this show together. We would not be able to deliver this kind of experience to you without Paula Kiger sitting in Facebook, Steve Taylor in LinkedIn, Julia Weeks helping us with analytics, and Carla Baranauckas doing a great show with booking guests. It takes a whole team to do this. And as you know, Shri, you started doing this almost 5 years ago. We're approaching the anniversary by taking out your phone and aiming it to the paper and saying, hey, let's experiment with this. I was proud to join you about 3 years ago, dropping in links as a random viewer just because I was interested and I thought it would help. And in December, when we switched to this new platform, we needed a full team every week. So I do want to thank, again, Paula, Steve, Julia, and Carla in particular for making that commitment really without asking, saying we're changing our format, we're changing our platform. We need a full team to do this every Sunday. So thank you. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to in my new role with Digimentors is integrating both our New York Times read-along team, our Shri COVID-19 call team, Rose Horowitz and Vandana Menon, who helped produce that show, and the She's on Call team. Julia Weeks works on both shows, She's on Call and New York Times read-along, to see how we can bring a great experience on all three shows throughout the week. So thank you to our production team. Shri, thank you to you, as always, for creating an incredible community around the New York Times read-along, and for giving me the opportunity to join Digimentors full-time. My first day is tomorrow, and I can't wait to...
And you're going to be super busy, as we know. Yeah, first day in theory. Just want to tell everyone, this talk show format that you've seen is one of the things we offer. So if you know someone who'd like to have their own talk show, we can build that for them, but we can also do book launches, and we can do any kind of virtual event, conferences. We're doing a conference. We did a conference for 100,000 people, the world's largest gathering of teachers in history. We've done gatherings for 50 people or 100,000 people. Your shows are probably in between, and we can help you with that. Don't even talk about canceling your event or starting to talk about your virtual event without emailing me, and we will talk you through how we can help you. And even if we can't work with you, we'd love to help. So please get in touch. And the organization is called Digimentors. The website is digimentors.group. And we can email you our brochure, and you can take a look at it. And we'd love to talk to you anywhere in the world. We can help folks. We've had amazing clients these last 5 months, and we are so humbled that we're able to do this. So with that, let me go work on my our She's on Call. And just thank again Veronica Chambers. She was just spectacular today. And this show will start as soon as we're off the air. You can watch again. And she was on at 8:30 to 10:15 today, narrative projects editor of the New York Times. Let's walk through our day today. So this is at 8:30. And then coming up at 11 a.m. Eastern is She's on Call. And then coming up at 9 p.m. Eastern is Positivity with Bob Kendrick, president of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, celebrating the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Negro Leagues. And we are celebrating the founding of the Negro Leagues 100 years ago and the 19th Amendment passing and the ratification of the 19th Amendment today. What a special day, and just humbled to have an opportunity to talk to these great people and to learn from these great people every single day, but especially today. With that, we're going to say good night and goodbye to everybody. Thank you, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye, and please be in touch.